Very good morning to all of you. Let me welcome you on behalf of Activa. My name is Kedar and I lead Activa business in India and Southeast Asian countries. The Today's session is designing the appropriate automation strategy for model validation and model risk management. At Activa, we have been conducting various webinars and sharing our best of experiences to broader segment of the customers. We have been working in the space of model risk management and model validation for a number of years. And the accumulated experience today, we will take this opportunity to share with you. The webinar would be run by my colleague Vivek Gupta. He is a product development strategist for model validation and model risk management. He's also been instrumental in delivering various projects in model risk management. And today's session is for 1 hour. Vivek will continue this webinar for around 50 minutes. There would be a Q&A session and you can raise your questions through Q&A sessions. If you are not able to raise the question, please raise the question in chat window. With this, let me hand it over to Vivek and all the best.
Thank you, Kedar. Good morning, everyone. I think in the next 15 minutes, what essentially I want to give a background to that, what does an overall model lifecycle look like? What are the various elements? What is happening in the industry right now? What is the expectations of different key stakeholders who are involved in the entire lifecycle? What is the expectation of different lines of defense, the business users, the model developers, the model validation team, and the audit requirement? And then how we can bring in and build efficiencies as a part of this entire life cycle. So what should be the right strategy on which a bank should be looking for in terms of the automation? So just a very brief cursor, I won't be covering anything in terms of the technicalities of model validation as such. Like if somebody is looking to understand more of the methodology, how to do a validation, or what are the various approaches for validation, then that is not what I'll be covering. My focus would be more about how the automation can work and what are the areas where banks should go for an automation. So a brief overview. So we know, quantitative models have always been one of the key important factors for the decision making, and they have a direct impact on your P&L, on the balance sheets, and on the reputation risk also. And historically, it has been seen like one of the classic big case, I think most of us would be aware of, way back in 2012, the London Whale case, where what happened, like JP Morgan, which is one of the biggest banks in the world globally, has ended up losing billions of dollars just because that there was no proper management of a model. The model was being developed by the same person who was also using it, a biggest flaw in the model development and in the validation and the overall model life cycle. Also, the different versions of that model were not being maintained anywhere as a consolidated manner in a model inventory. And the person was making tweaks in the models and was continuously using it without having tested on a good data set. So the model performance was unknown before the model got implemented in use case, due to which the bank ended up losing, billions of dollars. So there has been a lot of the education, a lot of publication in the industry from various bodies across the globe who have cited that they have always a concern about how banks are developing and how banks are using these models, and whether there are proper processes and mechanisms in place in order to validate these models as well. So with this thought process, let us first understand what exactly, why there is a need of this transformation in the model risk management. So the first thing is today's era, we are, witnessing a lot of challenge from, day-to-day stress testing requirements or IFRS 9. So there are a number of regulations which have come up, which are in principle driven by various quantitative set of models. Now, what it brings as a challenge to the bank, it brings the, multiple challenges that my model inventory has started increasing. So initially the banks might be keeping a tab of like a dozen of models, but now for big banks, the model inventory can go as much as like 300, 400, 500 models. So it becomes really a big challenge to stay on top of it, to understand which model is performing, which model needs a review, which model needs a redevelopment, which model needs a calibration, which is the version which is being live. All the things are being worked, are what you say staggered across different teams, different people. So it is one of the biggest challenge, where the banks are grappling with how to understand what is the right set of the models I need to use. The second is the models are no more just used for regulatory purposes. A number of models have a direct impact on your P&L statement, which means they directly hit the bottom line, which is not cheap. And it brings a lot of repercussions in terms of your reputation risk. It brings in repercussion in terms of the what do you say, the undue the what do you say, the focus from the investors, the undue focus from the regulatory bodies. Also now, the regulators have also, set up the individual departments at their end. They are also liaising with the different consultants across the globe to get into more areas of scrutiny. They are also getting into and challenging the banks that why this is the best model, why not the other model, how this model has been developed, what is the model performance, what was the performance of your second best model, third best model, and so on. So there is a lot of questions which come from the regulators. And the last point is the number of models in the current scenario because of COVID, etc., have failed. So it has brought in a lot of challenge that banks are heavily relying on these quantitative models to forecast capital, to forecast losses, to forecast business scenarios, but they're actually failing. So what do we need to do there? So essentially, this is the area where we need to streamline. We need to bring in the efficiency in the entire life cycle. And how we can do that, the models have to become more accurate. The need of the hour is that the models are failing, we go recalibrate, we redevelop, we take it to the use case, we implement it, and we verify the model performance again. So the entire time cycle in which you analyze that the model performance is going bad, you recalibrate, redevelop, you take it back to the implementation, you start using that model, and then again you re-verify. The overall life cycle has to be very small. Similarly, we need to think very consciously that the models which are coming as a part in your model inventory, they need to be rationalized. We cannot have the exponential growth happening in my model inventory. So it's always a challenge which comes back. Okay, I'm using this model. This model is not capturing the right set of customers, or this is leading to what you say a false positives or false negatives. So I need another model. So what happens is because of various requirements from different stakeholders, eventually bank ends up having a number of models. And then the process which needs to be streamlined here is the development, monitoring, and the validation. And the last part is when it comes to the validation requirements or the monitoring requirements, the framework which the bank should be developing, the overall strategy which the bank needs to think about as a part of the transformation, it should not focus with the challenges which you're witnessing right now. So I'll be covering in detail what are the challenges you might foresee in the next couple of years and how you should be prepared for it. But the whole idea is the strategy should not be tactical in nature. It should be more strategic, that how different teams come together and work in a coherent manner. Also, the regulators have been very vocal about that. What is their expectation? What are they looking for in terms of from the ongoing validation, ongoing monitoring? So there have been different publications way back from 2011 until today, which clearly cites out that there has to be an independency when it comes to the validation. So the person on development, the person who is using, and the person who is actually validating the model, it has to be three different hats. They cannot be together. So we need to bring in a lot of independency on the validation and monitoring side. And not just the focus should be only on the quantitative. The focus should also be on the qualitative aspects also of the model, whether the model documentation exists properly at the time of model development, whether the people have gone through with the right understanding of the end use of the model, whether the data used for the model is correct, and so on. So there is a good amount of qualitative validation criteria also, which prevails at the, what you say, understanding whether the model is fit for use or not. Essentially, there are various tests which have been suggested by various regulators and regulatory bodies, which the banks have to comply with. So by and large, there are two set of requirements which comes in. One, what is the regulator focus is. So they need at least on an annual basis the independent model validation report. And going forward, because of COVID coming into picture and more regulations coming in, they are making this, what you say, a half yearly exercise also. At the same point in time, there is an internal management, internal audit team who is also focusing on a similar aspect. So over there, it would be not be an yearly, but maybe could be at least on the tier one models, high risky models, a month on month cycle. So moving ahead, let us understand how and what are the various constituents of a model life cycle. So the cycle starts from identification of why do we need a model? What is the purpose for which we need to develop a model? So this is the use case from which the entire requirement emanates. This could be, I need a model for my IFRS 9 ECL computation. I need an what you say, a risk assessment, corporate model, rating model, and so on. So the need, why you need a model, that needs to be documented and specified, which gets translated into a model inventory. So the model goes to a cycle where the entire model risk management team would have an approval workflow where the head of the model risk management or the CRO or the head of the analytics would be saying, okay, I approve the development of this model. And then the model comes and sit as a part of your overall model inventory. And then from there, the entire life cycle of that model is being governed. So then it goes through the development. Now, under the development, there could be two scenarios. One, I might have an existing model which is not what you say is performing good. So I might redevelop a model, or there could be a new model which I have to develop. Now over here, the choice should be there that I can select multiple methodologies, multiple data sets. I can have a transformation on the data sets and some level of automation on the model development. This gets translated into the implementation of validation. Now, even as a part of the model development, before the model actually gets implemented, there is a validation which needs to be performed in order to ensure whether the model which has been developed, is it going to perform correctly on an out of sample data set, on a training data set or not. It should not be like, okay, fine, I developed the model and I implemented, then I realized, oh, this is not working on the data set, which has not been a part of the development. So that brings a big risk. So it eventually goes through a validation. Also, if it is an existing model in my what do you say, model inventory, then also I need to perform a validation. This then further goes into the implementation cycle. Now where you host this model or as a part of your hosting platform, you provide the documentations to the IT team, the functional documentation. They configure this model onto your platform and give it to the end users for the usage purpose. Moving ahead, the entire the validation as well as the front end line, the front end team, they would be using this model, and then eventually it will go through your periodic validation and review. And this is one of the most critical part of the entire life cycle. That when I'm talking about a model inventory of 400 models, or I'm talking even a model inventory of 50 models for a small bank, how do I continuously validate, periodically review, and generate the documentation which needs to go to the management, to the audit, and to the regulator? This further then goes into, if my model performance is failing, I get certain red alerts, my model needs a recalibration, then it goes towards a model planning. So there is an yearly plan, quarterly plan, monthly plan, which is there constituted for the entire model inventory. And if the model is not fit for use, then it goes towards the retire. So this is the by and large a 360-degree overview of what are the various pieces of the puzzle of a model lifecycle. Now with this, what I'll be doing is I'll be focusing on that what are the various areas in these specific model life cycles which a bank should go for an automation and what are the challenges they are witnessing on that. So let us first understand what are the moving wheels. So there are three primary sources when it comes to the automation. And, we've been having a discussion with a lot of banks, across the globe. And what we are trying to understand from all of them is that if you go and talk to a CRO, you go and talk to a model risk management head, you go and talk to an analyst who is doing a day-to-day validation and monitoring, and if you go and talk to the developers or the frontline people, all of them have a different requirement when they talk about model risk management as a subject, model risk management as a solution which can automate this entire life cycle. So let us pick up first to understand what does a CRO is looking for. So now a CRO's the main requirement is I have a huge outburst of models. And because of crisis like COVID, like in last 1 year, we have been so much of debates and discussions going on with the CROs, specifically in the model risk management teams, that the business has said these models are failing. These assumption doesn't hold good for me anymore. So can you give me another model which is more intuitive for me? So the model inventory has gone through a huge exponential growth. So is there is a mechanism where I can classify, okay, my model 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the most riskiest model and I should be monitoring them more closely. So what I'll do is let me quickly take you through what is the expectation when it comes to model inventory and what does a model inventory look like. So what I'm doing is I'm using what do you say, a brief of a model risk management platform, what we have, just to explain the points, the perspective of the end user. So when I talk about the model inventory, so essentially like there could be various versions of the models, like there are 10 different versions, 10 different variants of the model. Now, which is the model which sits in tier one, which is the model which sits in tier two, tier three, and tier four. So can there be an automated mechanism which classifies which model should be, what do you say, in tier one or which model should be in tier two? So there are like various set of algorithms which should be pre-configured in the platform, explaining the end user that, okay, fine, basis these criteria like a materiality factor or regulatory exposure factor, your particular model goes and sit as a part of tier one or tier two. So for example, there could be various criteria. You might assess a model, how much materiality of my exposure is, whether if the model fails, whether it will impact a regulatory penal, or what you say, a penalty charges on my portfolio, or whether because of the model failure, I'll have a high reputation risk. For example, I'm approving uh, incorrect customers, a lot of NPAs will increase in my portfolio. Obviously, that creates not just the regulatory exposure impact, but even the reputation impact. Or is it the operation? So a model which is being used by 2,000 users across my bank. Okay, it's a pan-India operation or it's a global operation. So there are a number of people using it. So there is a lot of operation factors come into picture. Or is it because the model itself is very complex? Basis few criteria, the platform basically should be telling you that whether it should go in tier one, tier two, or tier three. So essentially, this brings in one of the important aspects, that how do I, manage my entire model inventory? How do I track my overall model performances? Now, the second point, because my model inventory is huge, how do I capture with that what is the status of every model in my portfolio? Which model is performing? Which model is not performing? What is the action item which is associated with a model? Who is working on that action? What is the issues which are still open? Can I see all of this together? Right now, it's completely decentralized. A stress testing team would have its own issue management. What do you say? A IFRS 9 team would have its own. Similarly, a Basel 3 team will have its own. So everybody has its own agendas which is running around. But I, as a head of the team, can I see that together? So this is, yes, this is a very, very, what do you say, important view, which essentially the managers would be looking at. The reason for it, that the users also are trying to understand that what and where their focus should be. So for example, what I mean here is like, okay, I know this is my model inventory. I know this is one model which is under the development. There could be 4 models under review and 7 models under the approval stage. Now, what is the performances? What are the issues? So if I can go, can I see a place where all my tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 models, what is their performances? And like low means it is in a very bad zone, and a green means it's in a good zone. So how my model landscape is looking like. I don't have to go and talk to 10 different people to figure that out. Can I see that? Similarly, can I track my model performances over the period on the key important statistics? Also, different models have gone through different validations. What is their status is looking like? When was the validation being done? Who was the owner of this model? Who was doing the validation? Can I have answers to all of that? So this brings an important view of the entire model landscape or the model inventory, which the bank or the head of the team has to take care of. Now, the third point is, which is really, interesting to hear, that how do I automate this day-to-day job where my team spends most of its time? So the teams are, grappling with, managing the ongoing model performance. So there are two things which happen in the market right now. One, either most of the banks end up spending thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, creating an offshore team, or hiring the consultants who come every year with a huge mandate and say these are the 50 models which will go into the validation and spend the entire year working with you. Where the bank always have a problem, right? Why can't I internalize this? Why can't I do it myself? Why do I have to spend thousands of dollars every year and run into a situation where I don't have a command on it? So also there is another set of scenario where the banks are doing this internally. But the challenge over there is the teams are becoming huge and the teams are spending most of the time on the validation, but they're grappling with the time they need to spend on enhancing the model performance, optimization, and the various other aspects of the model lifecycle. So if there is a scenario where I can go, I can say, okay, fine, I have a model. For example, I have different set of models. I select a particular model, what I want to select. I can define whether I want to, what is the default definition you have, or what is the binning choices, like uh, a 0 becomes the best or a 0 becomes the worst. You define, you run your own computations on the platform, and there is a platform which gives you the idea, okay, fine, this is one of the models, how my default rates look like, how my data is being distributed, a glimpse of the entire data set, that okay, fine, this is how the default rates are, this is how the missing data for various variables in my models look like, whether I'm passing my data qualities or not, and then automating the need of the hour, which is your entire validation results. Now, the platform should cater to that. It captures all the validation discriminatory part test, which is not just being suggested by one regulatory body, but what is being even used for your internal reporting purposes. It should give you a view of how the model performance has been moving across the key important views which is needed for the validation team to understand that whether the model is performing good, it is bad, it is satisfactory. And when it comes to the automation, it should also help the end user in understanding that what are the next action items they need to do. It should not only tell them that, okay, fine, your model performance is 51%. It is in satisfactory zone, which is being signified by this orange color. But it also tells you that, okay, fine, Vivek, these are the 10 things you need to now do. So you can track these actions as a part of the action management. And similarly, the time which is being spent. Now, my overall model performance is satisfactory, fine. The next question comes, which is the module which is performing the worst? For example, I'm saying uh, the management of the financial score, and I can see my conduct score is performing the best. So which are the factors which are performing best or bad? I can drill down up to the factor level. So the point here is, when you're looking for a streamlined automation, it should give you a view not just at the most apex level, but it should take you to the most granular information that, okay, fine, but this is my model. These are the various modules, and this is the most granular level. These are the factors. How are they performing? Do I need to remove? Do I need to add? Do I need to modify? So that is the view which we capture on basically the automation. Now, this can be automated, and this should be automated in a seamless manner. All the models which come and sit as a part of the model inventory should be automated out here. The next part is the another area where the teams have been facing a lot of challenges. How do I automate my entire model validation report? Can I automate that? That's the first question. If yes, to what level I can do? And the third question where people become what you say or ask us is, if I can get that automated, then how much of customization I can bring in that process. So the entire model validation report, for example, if you are able to generate directly from the system. So for example, there is a report management, you go there, you select which model you want to generate a report. And now this brings in independency. So anybody in the bank who has access to a report management, he'll be able to extract the report. Why do I, as a CRO, have to ask somebody that, can you tell me which was the report you shared with me last year? What was the results? Can't I go there, select for which model validation I want to bring the report and see the results on my own? Similarly, there is a lot of challenge which comes into, oh, the report version I've incorrectly submitted to the regulator. The latest version was still with me. Can I avoid all those manual errors? Because now I know which is the report, which is the final one I want to use. So how do we enhance all of this? And the report should not be just, capturing like what is your model validation results are. It should also provide the analysis of those results. The copy paste of the results is an easy job, but if you bring in the machine learning capabilities around and give the analyst in the bank a benefit that, okay, fine, this is what the interpretation of the results of your models are, and this is how they look like, then there is nothing better than that. If you're able to document the reports, the entire process of validation, how it is running, what are the data is being used, how the validation is being performed, and what the results look like. This entire process takes days, and not just hours. It takes days for the analyst, turn this around. How do we bring in the efficiency in this? So this is a very important aspect for the CROs. They want to bring in the efficiency. Now, when it comes to the automation, the biggest challenge is I'm not looking for an automation for tomorrow. I'm not looking, you bring a system and there are vendors in the market who comes and boast a lot of things, but they take, a year or more than a year. How can I do this in a very faster manner? My requirement of validation, my requirement of entire model risk management automation is today. I don't want to spend 6 months. So the solution which can do this job in a couple of weeks, that's what the need of the hour is. And that's where the challenge which the CROs are right now struggling with. Another important aspect is there is so much of advancement which has happened on the machine learning side, on the advanced analytics. But people, like the scenario which I showed you, the case study which I was taking you to, the model was having a 50% accuracy ratio. The model was giving a satisfactory performance. Now, what do I do? I'll be doing essentially three things. As part of the model lifecycle, I'll go in my redevelopment, a review of this model, or maybe I'll try to do recalibration of the model. Now, as a part of the review, what I'll do, I'll try to check, okay, which are my worst performing factors. Maybe I'll try to remove them, redevelop my model, see its model performance. Scenario two, I would try to do a univariate analysis, try to understand which factors are more important to me, which are less important to me, which is, so maybe the less important factors I remove. I do another iteration, I redevelop the model. I have discussion with business team, try to understand, are they overfitting model on any variable, and then again redevelop the model. And it goes through an iterative process. But can I automate this as well? So the point which I want to highlight here is, for example, there is a machine learning capability which tells, and what we call it, as a part of our platform on the case study is a challenger model. What essentially is happening over there is for the same set of model where I showed you, let me just build the story. So like, for example, over here, the area under the curve was 75 odd percent, 76% precisely. Okay. Can I get a model using the same data set, which I have used for my validation, a benchmark model using machine learning, which will explain that whether this model, what is the best counterpart model. So what I mean here is if I go to this challenger model, you can see there could be various algorithms which are available. You have random forest, you have neural networks running around, you have XGBoost, deep learning. How I run all these various machine learning capabilities on the same data set, and it tells me, okay, yes, Vivek, there is a better model which exists. For example, using a random forest, I get a lift on my model performance by almost 8%. Instead of 76%, now my area under the curve has become 84%. Similarly, if I use an XGBoost algorithm, it becomes 89%. Whereas if I'm using deep learning, it is going down to 73%, which means my existing model is better. And how do we understand this? These are the various variables which are performing better, and this is the importance to each of the variables which the user has to give. So the idea here is, how do we bring in the efficiency for my team when they are redeveloping and optimizing the models where the model validation has shown that the model validation is not working well. So this is the another need. And the last part is, which is the most interesting one for the CROs, how can I overcome the challenges in building the capability of my team? The challenge is bringing the talent, the right talent in the right time, and scale it up has always been the a historically a biggest challenge for all the what you say the analytics vertical heads. So how can I make it a self-service model risk management practice? So that answer can only be solved that you have whatever the minimal resources you have in place right now, and try to automate it using the right partner. Now let's move ahead to understand what are the requirements of an analyst. Now the analyst, the validation team, is more focused on the comprehensiveness. So if you talk about an analyst, he'll say, I'm not just looking for a PD model. I'm looking for an LGD model validation. I'm looking for an EAD model validation. I'm also looking for my qualitative model validation. So a platform which is suppose is only capturing a PD model, that is not going to solve my purpose for the art. Okay, I need to go back. I need to have a platform which tells me, okay, which are the various other models I can validate. So the idea out here is the qualitative validation, your IFRS 9 framework validation, your IFRS 9 ECL stage assessment, PIT/PD models. Can I do a validation for all of this? Can I validate my EAD? So the point here is a solution which is only and only capturing just a small subset of the overall model inventory in terms of the validation. That is not what is going to meet the requirement for a validation team. It has to take care of everything altogether. The another important aspect is the data quality standards. Now, we know as a part of the validation, the first step is the validation data set coming in. And we know because of the historical data set, there is a lot of data quality challenges which come in. And the analyst end up spending a couple of days in enhancing and putting in business rules to say, for example, age is a factor in my model. The data for age is missing because somebody has not captured properly. What will I do? I'll say, okay, fine, 100 places it is missing. On an average in my data, the age looks like in the range of 25 years. Let me put it 25 for all. The problem with this is I brought in the biasness as a human in my data set. This could have an impact on my model validation results. So what I can do, I think, okay, fine, let me take another scenario. Let me talk to business. Business says, okay, fine. Typically the range of the customers who come in our book is around 28. So you can use 28-year-old as a values for all the missing variables. I do that. Now I'm living with an assumption, again, a human assumption of another first line user. But can this problem which I face, the challenge which I face on the validation, on the data quality, using certain machine learning capabilities, can I do that? The answer to that has to be addressed. So if I show you something, like for example, you're looking at the model. Now, there is, we call it as data wrangling. So for example, the case study which I walk you through, in the model, there are various factors. Suppose access to capital. Now, the access to capital is being distributed across, the different dimensions. We can look at the ranges, running from 0 to 5. So the values can appear either 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the value I need to take? 4.1, 4.2, and so on. So first, let us understand a data analysis. So the view which you're looking at is very interesting. And it is explaining you, like, for example, the access to capital. In my overall data set, in an individual place, it is missing in 35 places. But how do I know that because it's missing in 35 places, it has an impact on 5 other variables, which are linked together in my model equation? So access to capital, if I read it together, it has an impact with customer loyalty and with dividend policy as a variable on 4 instances. Now, what can I do? As I said, I can go with a manual adjustments, or I can use again certain machine learning capabilities to enhance the data set. I can use again various algorithms, and in the market, there are around like 28 algorithms which can support the imputation of the missing data set. So, fine, you select a model, you run, and you see whether the model what do you say, the model data set, which is to be used for the validation, that has been enhanced. So this is what is being signified by the pink line, that how the data set has been enhanced on the missing variables. So how machine learning comes and plays a major role, that is a key requirement we should be providing to the analysts, because this is one of the areas where they are facing a lot of challenges. And last is, can I bring all my models in one place? So for an analyst, the another important aspect is when you go talk about the validation. Now, let us understand, you'll be bringing a new platform, for example, or you would be enhancing your existing platforms. All your models might have not been developed using that platform. Your models could have been developed using R, could be developed using Python, could be developed using SAS, could be developed using MATLAB or some other, the analytical tools which are available for model development. Now, how do I bring those models in my model validation platform? How do I monitor it? And how do I bring all the artifacts of those models onto the platform? So the point here is, what I'm trying to say is, somebody can go and manually do creation of these models. Now, if somebody has to manually create, just imagine the job. You're not bringing in the efficiency. You are just replacing the way he's doing it right now, his job, through some solution. But again, he'll be running the same show. But rather, if you give him an option that, okay, I have a model which is being developed in R, I have a model which has been developed in Python, and I have a model which is being developed in SAS. Can I bring it? And let me quickly show you what does these models look like. So for example, uh, the SAS model, and let me know if you're not able to see what do you say, the screen. Kedar, maybe you need to help me out because I'm going through the pop-ups. So this is a model object looks like. For example, if I quickly scroll, this is your prediction function is. It talks about that these are the various variables in my model: amount, statuses, credit history, credit delays, days past use, whether it is a foreign worker or a domestic worker, what is the duration of that worker in my bank, and so on. And these are the coefficients. So this is your model prediction. This is your predict function, which looks like. How do I configure this in my system? And like, if I know, and if you would have imagined, like when I was talking about the model specification, ultimately for validation, you need to bring in the model structure, which is on which you will bring in the data, and then you will run the validation, right? So the biggest job is for the banks where the model inventory is huge. If you're asking them to prepare manual files and upload, then that's not the right automation. So the automation should be focusing on how I can bring automatically all the set of models and use it for my further computation and validation purpose. Now let us go and understand the requirements of an audit team. So my third line of defense is my internal audit and my regulatory. Their requirement is, how do I understand what are the linkages between the end output, what is my model output, what is my validation data set, and how historically this model has been used. So for example, just to give you the idea and better to explain you what I mean here is, um, so there could be various data sets which are running in. I have my rating systems, I have my Excel computations for my ECL, and I have my journal ledgers which are being used for my data. I could have certain collateral variables which are running in. How do I see an interconnected view explaining me how this entire data set of my model is linked together? Which variable is being used for which process of my model, and from which data set my data is coming in for my validation? Can I give them a view of this entire, what you say, the data lineage side? This is what essentially they are looking for. So a transparency in the underlying process is really important, underlying data. The second aspect is, like, what happened in case of London Whale case in JP Morgan. There was no workflow which has been monitored. The person who was sitting in London was making changes, and the person who was sitting in New York was using that model. And there was no approval life cycle which used to say, I made the change, I deploy this, and I use it. No, it cannot be that. The regulator mandate is, you create a model, you insert that model, it goes through an approval life cycle, the model owners approve it depending upon what is the approval, what you say, the policy within the bank. But the model just not go directly sit as a part of my validation or my model inventory and somebody just use it. So it has to go through the approval life cycle, whether that is happening. All the changes which are there in my model, are those getting documented? Are those being captured centralized manner in one system? Can I see all the versions, the documentation of all those versions, the model specifications, and the model validation results? Now, this is too much to ask, but the answer, if we are able to provide, that's what the automation, helps out. So, for example, what I mean here is, you would have different versions, right? For all these versions, what is the data set which is being used? This is the same model having two different versions. Who is the owner? Who has approved it? When it was created? What is the status? And so on. So there are a couple of details which you need to provide as an audit trail to the to the audit team. And this I've already spoken about, the interconnectedness on the data, which brings in the transparency. So these are by and large the challenges which the audit team face as a part of their yearly audit mandate. And this is what they're looking for when it comes to the automation. Now, just to summarize a brief recap, how you can bring in the various model lifecycle efficiencies. So these are the various core aspects of your model lifecycle. The first is the model inventory. I can do the automation of my entire model inventory by classifying various models into various tiers depending upon their goals, use, materiality, and various other factors, capturing all the information which is linked to that model. So this is one of the areas where you can bring in the efficiency in your entire model lifecycle. The second is, at the time of your model validation, model development, how do I quickly automate the model validation part? Right now, if I'm the model developer, I'm sitting with the wish and fancies of my model validation team, because they also have a number of models on their plate which have to go through. So there is a queue which I have to stand, wait when my number will come in, and then the validation will happen. So the time of development, validation, and taking this model to the market is huge. How can I reduce that? So this is the second area of efficiency which you as a bank can focus on. The second is your periodic model validation, the time which you spend on the validation on week, year on year basis, the money which you spend, how can I use it in a most optimal manner, not just for the validation, but even for generating the validation reports, which is really important. Ultimately, a validation has to be submitted and supported by a detailed documentation, which goes to the audit team. The fourth area is how can I do the automation and bring efficiency in my ongoing model performance, ongoing model monitoring. Okay. And last part is similar to a model validation. There is a model monitoring also, which needs to be documented. What I mean by model monitoring. So if I take a step back, and I think in the case study, I didn't mention a touch upon. So there could be on the retail side, specifically on the retail side, the point is that the banks are looking for understanding, on a much higher frequency, whether the scorecards, for example, which they've deployed, are they performing good or bad? And because it brings a huge amount of risk. For example, I have developed a scorecard for credit cards. And I'm saying as a strategy, the customers I'm focusing on who are in the range of income group of more than $20,000 a month and who are in the age group of 25 to 35 years. And I've created a model keeping this business objective in mind. When I implemented this model, I realized the population which is coming in is primarily in the age group of 20 to 25 and in the income group of around $15,000, which means the model which has been developed is not getting applied on the right population, which means I have to review my model, redevelop it, and redeploy it. So my requirement of model monitoring is much higher. And how do we observe that? By looking at simple, clear mechanics or metrics, like whether my model performance or model stability is moving across different buckets. So this is like different bands, and these lines can tell you if there is a shift in the model population versus the model development population, they will move up and down, which can be further explained in terms of your model population stability index, whether it is moving a lot or it is in the acceptable zone or it is not in the acceptable zone. If it is not, then can I go and see at a factor level what are various factors and how they're performing. So the CSI values, the characteristic stability index. So this is a very important view, which banks are looking forward to automate because it brings a lot of risk at their end. So this is how I would like to summarize the entire uh, efficiencies which needs to come in the model lifecycle. So quickly moving, keeping a time check, moving ahead on the right selection for the strategy. So basically the current scenario, which is in maybe most of the cases across mid or large size bank, in a small size bank, even this could not be the scenario. They are completely manual or outsourced. Most of the functions of their model risk management. So the reporting is very suboptimal. It is being done manually, and by and large, it's staggered across the entire year. The performance monitoring obviously happens on an ad hoc basis. A request comes from the business, and then accordingly, people monitor it. There is an incomplete coverage of the overall inventory of the models. Reason for that, there is no way to capture it in a centralized manner without a strategic platform sitting in the bank. And tracking the issues associated with each and every model is also a big challenge for the banks to monitor. Now, how and what should be the target state? The target state should be I bring in the entire data quality standardization. I build rules around it, use ML to enhance it. Similarly, I automate my entire validation piece, the entire report generation, support my model development team with the benchmark models, how they can build new models in a much lesser period, how they can redevelop the models in a much lesser period, and how do I automate the entire ongoing model performances in the seamless manner. And this gets overarching independency within the bank. So this becomes a completely self-service function for the bank. So how do I do that? So this is where the bank should be focusing on when they move ahead. Now, just to give you the idea, basis our discussion with the number of clients, and we've been into the industry from last like 15, 16 years now. A number of banks are sitting in this area, which is largely manual, leveraging these spreadsheets. The banks who are moving towards the next step, where they are trying to automate, they're trying to use the tactical toolkits. But the tactical toolkits, you will spend again thousands of dollars. It will only solve the purpose for 6 months, at max a year. And then, sorry, and then you will essentially end up, what do you say, investing again into a strategic tool. The point which I want to bring the notice here is the nature and the size of the problem, the challenges which the bank is witnessing, and the kind of the regulations which they are changing, and the growth which is there in terms of the model inventory. The automation requirements and the challenges can never be fulfilled by a tactical toolkit which is based on R or Python, something like that. You have to go for a strategic partner which doesn't lead to a suboptimal automation, justifies the amount of money which you're spending, and give you the benefits of all the areas of efficiency which I've talked about. So just to summarize in a very nutshell, the strategic partner should be giving you a strong data quality layer, giving you the report generation automation, should give you a challenger model framework, and the transparency on the overall process. And it should be comprehensive, not just the PD, your LGD, AD, and all the other models should be captured out here. So with this is all what we wanted to capture as a part of the discussion. We'll leave this forum open now for the Q&As, and if there are any points, I would like to take it now. Kedar, can you help me if there are any questions out there?
Yeah, fantastic session, Vivek, so far. And we have a continuous attendance of the attendees for this webinar that shows the interest and attention. However, there is no question so far.
So I see one question on my chat window. It's 1-to-1. So what they wanted to understand is, that, okay. So how basically the model validation can be, centralized within the bank using the solution which I was just trying to, was taking through as a part of, what do you say, the case study. So the point which I want to bring here is, it's a centralized solution using which different teams in the bank can log together. And it's not just one team, it could be your stress testing team, your IFRS 9 team, your Basel 3. These are the three different teams together who are developing this different set of models. They can log together the entire model inventory, and they can run independently all the validation monitoring of their respective models. It is not like that somebody has to wait in queue for the other person to finish the model validation, then he'll take it up. It is a strategic platform on which multiple users can work together in parallel to see the model validation results, the documentations, and the details around it. I got another question from Alfraz. Normally during model validation, there should be data massaging. Would this be handled by the solution to assure consistency and accuracy? Yes. So the point here is, Ryan, that yes, I showed you as a part of the walkthrough that the entire data massaging which happens, is covered on the platform. So there are two ways of dealing with this. One is your data wrangling, which I take you up, what you say, I've given you a glimpse of it, where using the ML capabilities, you can enhance and massage the data set, and there is a complete audit trail which is being managed around it. The second view is the data preparation. As a part of the data preparation, we have our own ETL tools, which allows you running all those data massaging business rules configuration on the system, and then the entire, what do you say, the audit trail of all those data massagings are being maintained. So you do not lose on any history of the data. Whatever you do in terms of the data enhancement, that sits on the same platform, and you can view that. Does that addresses the point? Okay, there is one more question. Okay, yes. Okay, thanks. Sounds great.
On behalf of many of my customers, I have a question which is related to the entire life cycle of model management or model development to model sunset. Where do you exactly see maximum risk coming in? That's one. Secondly, maybe you can answer one by one. That's the first question I would say.
Okay, so Kedar, it's actually a very interesting point which you brought it up to the notice. So the biggest risk, in the entire model life cycle comes in the lack of the rigor which the bank is putting in terms of the ongoing uh, model performance and ongoing model monitoring. What happens is sometimes uh, the bank are end up, for example, one of the models is failing. Bank spends too much of effort in just enhancing that particular model performance or a few specific set of models performance, or they're also grappling with a lot of regulatory requirements that they end up ignoring the poor performing models, which on the hindsight brings a lot of risk on the impact on the PNL. So what happens as a part of then the yearly exercise, if they are able to manage, doing the validation in a timely manner for those set of models which they have missed out, then it comes to the notice, oh, we've been using an incorrect model, maybe which is an incorrect model for the model fit per se itself in the last 6 months. We should have been, more vigilant about it. So this is one of the area, the ongoing uh, the model validation monitoring is brings the risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are coming to the end of this discussion. The time allotted to us, I think it is getting over. So let's use this time to thank all the participants. Largely, we have seen participation from all countries in ASEAN, in India, Southeast Asia. And thank you for this consistent attention and participation in the webinars arranged by Aptiva team. And we'll keep arranging such webinars and looking forward for your participation. Uh, that. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Vivek, for this wonderful session. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank
Thanks a
you
lot.
for the audience, for a good audience. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye bye.